Chairman Brown, Ranking Member Toomey, thank you very much for holding this hearing today, and I want to thank our panel of nominees for your time and for your testimony here today. Each of you at the Commerce Department and Treasury Department represent very important positions, and I appreciate your presence here today. Mr. Estevez, I'd like to start with you. You've been nominated to lead the Bureau of Industry and Security. Its position is one of the most important across the government for our strategic competition with the Chinese Communist Party. The decisions that you make now can have generational impacts, and I'm very concerned about the national security risks of doing business with CCP-controlled entities and national champions. And while the Trump administration imposed export controls to prevent telecom giant Huawei and its ilk from dominating the 5G and Internet of Things arenas here in the U.S., they also did it to prevent these companies from accessing sensitive U.S. information. I'm concerned that the Biden administration appears to be moving in a direction that would reverse this national security policy, such as its recent decision to grant licenses for the sale of auto chips to Huawei. So, Mr. Estevez, I'd like to start with this question. Do you feel that Huawei and other CCC-packed national champions pose a national security threat and an economic security threat to the United States?
Senator, thank you for that question. In my past role at DOD, I read about Huawei almost every day in my morning read. And I would say that Huawei does present a national security threat to the United States. And it's my understanding that there's been no change in policy regarding Huawei. They remain on the entity list and they remain under scrutiny.
I appreciate that. As U.S. Ambassador to Japan in my previous position, I worked very hard with the Japanese government to get them to likewise agree to block entities like Huawei from their system so that we could have a clean internet system and ability to communicate with our allies. Other countries like Australia and New Zealand have followed suit. I'm hopeful that the UK will do the same. Mr. Estevez, will you commit to keeping Huawei on the entities list under your tenure?
I see no reason that Huawei would come off the entity list unless things change, Senator.
Mr. Estevez, there's a disturbing trend that is underway that I've been watching for those companies that are on the entity list, making an attempt to restructure themselves, to make themselves smaller in a way, to get themselves in a position that they could somehow circumvent the entities list itself and get beyond what the designation originally intended. Are you aware of this sort of activity?
Again, Senator, during my time at the Department of Defense, I represented the department on CFIUS, and I watched lots of maneuvers by Chinese companies or shell companies or split-off companies to try to get around U.S. regulatory strictures. And if I'm confirmed, I intend to keep a close eye on doing that, and we will review repeatedly to ensure that we are doing the right things to protect national security with regard to the PRC.
I'm pleased to hear you say that. Again, I've seen these types of attempts as well, but the effort to restructure and, quote, structure around our designations, I think is something that should be a top priority and a top concern should you be confirmed, and I appreciate that. I also would like to ask you if you could commit to taking a very close look at Huawei's recently spun off smartphone brand called Honor. Based on open source reporting, do you have any opinion on whether Huawei is using this spin-off brand to minimize or circumvent Huawei's own designation on the entities list?
As I just said, I've seen previous maneuvers by the Chinese. I too read the Washington Post article yesterday on Honor, and it's something I'll have to look at when I get to the department, should I be confirmed. I do not have the information in front of me that would give me the full picture on that, if you understand.
I think you share the same concern that I do. I hope that you do, and I appreciate your taking a very hard look at that. And I'd also just ask you in closing to commit to being as transparent as possible with this oversight committee as you progress in your role, should you be concerned, in terms of providing regular briefings to us as to how you are evaluating those companies that are on the entities list and how you're protecting the United States from CCC-backed companies and entities that could threaten our national and economic security.
Senator, as I did in my past positions, I certainly believe in the oversight of Congress and am happy to work with committees to provide transparency to what we're doing.
Thank you, Mr. Estevez. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Senator Hagerty. Senator Van Hollen of Maryland is recognized.